Hello everyone, welcome to Easy Economics. How is everybody doing? Well, today I brought for you all May-June 2025 0455 variant 13. We'll be looking at MCQs today. So let's quickly dive into the paper. MCQ number 1. MCQ number 1 says, what is not a factor of production? This means out of the 4 options available, there would be one option which is not a factor of production. And we all are familiar with the factors of production: land, labor, capital, and enterprise. The options available are: A says a $10 note, B says a farm laborer, C says a farm shop, and D says a tractor. Now, if we look at the options available, B talks about the farm laborer. That means it refers to labor. Farm shop and option number D, a tractor, both are capital, hence they are factors of production. So B, C, and D are chopped off logically. So we are left with option A. A says a $10 note. Now, if you look at the elimination rule, A is the answer. And now, if you look at the logic, A would be the answer because all the 3 factors except for A are factors of production. A is not a factor of production because a $10 note is a medium of exchange over here. It's actually helping to purchase the factors of production. It's not directly contributing towards the production of goods. So when it's not directly used in production, so it's not a factor of production. Therefore, for number 1 MCQ, we'll shade in A as the correct response. Number 2. MCQ number 2 says a person works at home making small cakes. She can make 30 cakes an hour and she works for 4 hours a day. So this means 30 cakes per hour into 4 means she produces 120 cakes per day. So 120 cakes per day she's producing it. Now she sells the cake for $2 each and the ingredients cost her $50. Now they're saying, what is the opportunity cost if she takes a working day for a holiday? So instead of working, if she goes on a holiday, so what was the opportunity cost? Now recall, opportunity cost is the cost of the best alternative foregone. If she decides to take a day off, what would she be foregoing? The cake she could have been producing. It has got nothing to do with the earnings because we don't know how much cakes she would be selling. Neither are we familiar with uh, the earnings. So we'll chop off A and B. They are all incorrect. 30 cakes cannot be because she produces 120 cakes in a day. So the opportunity cost of taking a day off rather than working would be the cake she could have been producing instead. So therefore, the correct answer is D. She will shade in D as the correct answer. I hope this is clear. All right, MCQ number 3. MCQ number 3 says an economy produces different types of goods using its limited resources. It's showing a production possibility curve, and the vertical axis displays the consumer goods, the horizontal axis displays the capital goods. And the question is asking, what does point X on the PPC shows? Now, what is X showing? Now, if you look at point X, it's showing a higher quantity of combination of consumer goods and a lesser amount of capital goods. So if you compare the consumer goods, they are relatively more produced rather than the capital goods. It is producing a combination, but more inclination is towards consumer goods and lesser towards the capital goods. Now let's look at the options. A says all resources are used for the production of consumer goods. No, it's producing a combination. B says more resources are allocated towards producing capital goods rather than consumer goods. No, it's inclined towards producing more of consumer goods. So again, it's incorrect. C says resources are allocated to produce a mixture of consumer goods and capital goods. Yes, that's correct. And B says total resources are not being fully utilized for production of these goods. That's incorrect because the resources are utilized. That is why it's on the PPC. So for 3, it has to be C. All right. MCQ number 4. MCQ number 4 says, what is the function of the price mechanism in a market economy? We all know price mechanism is what helps a free market economy allocate its resources, right? So price mechanism acts as an indicator towards utilization of factors of production and production decisions, right? So, so for MCQ number 4, the very first option says allocating resources and guiding choices. That's the correct answer. So for 4, we'll shade in A. Number 5. MCQ number 5 displays a demand and a supply schedule. They've listed the various prices and for rice per kg. Initially, the price is at $2. And if you look at the table, so it's at 1.5 where the market is at equilibrium. The quantity demanded is equals to quantity supply. So it's at equilibrium over here. So now at present what is happening, if I draw a normal sloping demand curve and demand and supply diagram and I try to display what the curve is showing, what the tables are showing. So what we can recall is that, let's suppose if this is 1.5 and at present it's at 2. So at 2, I'll show this as price and this as quantity. Now this is the equilibrium. This is at 2, this is the current price. Now at current price, what is happening? This is the demand and this is the supply. So this is all excess. So at present, at 2, quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded at $2. So this means we've got excess supply. Now they say, if the price is reduced to $1 per kg. So if the price falls to $1, what should happen? That means it will fall below the equilibrium price. Now notice at $1, what is happening? The quantity demanded is 30 and the quantity supplied is 15. So it is a shortage. And at 2, what was happening? The quantity demanded was 10, the quantity supplied was 25. So there was an excess supply of 15. So now there would be shortage. Why? Because the quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied. So what's happening? From excess supply or a surplus, we are moving towards a shortage, right? Now let's look at the options. The market will move from a surplus to a shortage. That's exactly what the correct answer is. So you see how easy it gets once you decipher the information and you break it into smaller chunks and you help identify what is happening in the situation. See that? All right, I hope this is clear. MCQ number 6. MCQ number 6 is the market, it's displaying the market for cherries in Chile. The vertical axis is displaying the price, the horizontal axis is displaying the quantity, and there has been a shift in the demand curve towards the right, which means that there is an increase in demand. Now, why would there be an increase in demand for cherries? This is what they are asking. They are asking why did the demand curve shift? A newspaper article stating cherries are good for your health. That's correct. 6 is has to be A, but then why A? A poor harvest for cherries due to bad weather? No, this would cause a fall in the supply, so that's incorrect. An increase in the imports of cherries from Israel? Again, this is going to increase imports and it's related to supply. So it will increase supply. But here the demand is increasing, so again it's incorrect. D says the government reducing the sales tax on cherries. Again, it's going to increase supply and not demand. We'll show about B, C, and D. The correct answer is A, because when the merits of consuming cherries are being shared with the consumers, so there has been a surge in the demand for cherries, hence the demand curve shifts towards the right, causing an increase in demand for cherries. So the correct answer for MCQ number 6 is A. Number 7. A German car producer estimates the price elasticity of demand for its cars is a negative 2. Now, since the price elasticity of demand is greater than 1, this means it's elastic. And the negative sign is showing that if price is going to increase, the quantity demanded will fall. Right? Now, what does this shows? That its cars are price elastic. Because the price is going to increase, the quantity demanded would fall. So for 7, it has to be. Alright, number 8. The diagram shows the supply curves for 4 firms. Now, A, B, C, and D are all 4 firms. And each of the supply curve is displaying its supply. Which firm has a price elasticity of supply of greater than 0 but less than 1? That means the price elasticity of supply should be greater than 0 but less than 1. This means we are talking about what? This means we are talking about what? We are talking about, yes, let's look at the curves. We're talking about inelastic demand, inelastic supply, right? All right, let's look at A. A is displaying elastic supply. C is showing perfectly inelastic supply. B is showing inelastic supply. And D is showing unit elastic. Now let's look at the values. When it's elastic supply, what is the value? Greater than 1 but less than infinity. So price elasticity of supply over here is greater than 1 but less than infinity. When it's perfectly inelastic, it is 0. When it's unit elastic, price elastic supply is equals to 1. What do we want? Greater than 0 but less than 1. That's the case in inelastic. When it's greater than 0 but less than 1. So for 8, it has to be B. Alright. Number 9. Which combination correctly describes features of a market economic system? We know in a market economic system, the resources allocation is done through price mechanism. So you'll chop A and B because they both are talking about government. What about ownership of land and capital? That's private sector owned, right? So it has to be C. So for 9, we'll shade in C. Number 10. A country's central bank raised the rate of interest from 1% to 4%. How would this change affect the amount saved and the cost of borrowing by individuals? So now if the interest rate rose, the cost of borrowing should increase. So if the cost of borrowing is increased, we can chop A and we can chop C because they both are saying cost of borrowing decrease. Then what about the amount saved? Amount saved should increase. Why? Because you're getting more returns now. So for 10, it has to be D. Alright. 11. What is a non-wage factor influencing an individual's choice of occupation? Now, out of these 4, there would be only one option that is not related to wages, that is not related to earnings. So if you look at the options available, A talks about the visibility of overtime work, B talks about the hourly rate of pay, C talks about the opportunity to get a financial bonus. So A, B, C are all talking about earnings, some way or the other related to earnings. It's only in option D when it's talking about the risk of unemployment, it's related to job security. So hence it has to be D. A, B, C are all related to earnings. It's only in option D when it's talking about job security. So we'll shade in D as the correct response. Number 12. Workers in the secondary sector of an economy earns more on average than workers in the tertiary sector. So the secondary sector, the production people are earning more than in the services. Now they're saying which combination would increase the differences in the wages in the secondary and the tertiary. So now which combination of both of these factors would actually increase the differences. Now, so if you look at the situation at present, workers in secondary are earning more than tertiary. Secondary sector must outperform the tertiary sector. So B, C, and D options. What is B saying? B is saying decreased demand for products. C is saying increased supply of workers, and D is saying weaker bargaining strength of trade unions. So if the secondary sector has a decreased demand, or if more workers are present, or if they have a lesser bargaining power in trade union, so the gap would not widen, it would shrink. So it's incorrect. The secondary sector employees' productivity must be more, and there must be more people available in the tertiary sector. That is the only reason why there has to be an increase in the earnings between the secondary and the tertiary sectors. Otherwise, the gap would not widen, right? So for 12, it has to be A. MCQ number 13. MCQ number 13 is displaying the average total cost curve. It's displaying, it's saying at what point on the average total cost curve the firm would start experiencing diseconomies of scale. That means any further unit of production would actually cause an increase in its average total cost. So if you look at the curve, it's after point C that the cost has begun to rise. So it's beyond, it's at point D, right? So where the firm has started experiencing diseconomies of scale. So for 13, we'll shade in D. 14. What is most likely to increase the demand for labor in an industry? Why do you think the demand for in an industry would increase its demand for labor? Let's look at the options. A says a decrease in the price of capital. So if the price of capital decrease, so we should decrease the demand for labor and not increase. So we'll choose A. B says a decrease in the productivity of labor. So if the productivity of labor is decreasing, if the output per labor is decreasing, why would you increase the demand? You chop it off. C says an increase in the demand for industry's product. Yes, that's correct, because this shows that the demand for the labor is a derived demand. The demand for goods increase, so the demand for labor increases. D says an increase in the wage paid to labor. So if the labor is now being paid more, so you would decrease the demand and not increase. So you chop D as well. So the correct answer is C, both by elimination and logic. 15. 15 displays us the costs table. It's talking about the variable cost at each output level, and it's saying the fixed cost is $100. It's asking us what has happened to the average total cost. Now, I would calculate the total cost over here by adding $100 to each of the variable cost. So 200 add 100, the total cost would be $300. 360 plus 100 over here would give you 460. 500 add 100 would give you 600, and 720 add 100 would give you 820. Now we'll calculate the average total cost for each. Average total cost at each would be calculated by dividing the total cost with the units. So 300 divided by 1 would give us the total cost to be $300. For 60 divided by 2 would give me 230. 600 divided by 3 would give me 200, and 820 divided by 4 would give me a 205. So this is the average total cost at each output level. Now what's happening? It kept on declining till unit 3, but when output was at unit 4, it rose. Now let's look at the options. It says it falls continuously. No, it doesn't fall. At fourth unit, it rose. So you'll chop A. B says it was highest at 4 units. It was highest at A, 300. So you'll chop B. C says it was lowest at 3 units of output. Yes, that's correct, because it was lowest, it was $200. So C is correct. D says it rises continuously. No, it doesn't rise. It kept on falling. It was at unit 4 that it rose again. So the correct answer is C. So you'll solve it out and then only you'll know which is the correct answer. Alright, number 16. A market changes from being very competitive to being a monopoly. Now, what happens when a firm is a monopoly? Its output falls and its price rises. So, output falls and price rises. So, for 16, it has to be B. So, we'll shade in B. Number 17. What is the most likely reason for a government to aim for price stability? Why do you think a government would want price to be stable? Because it wants to reduce uncertainty. So, when uncertainty would fall, trade would improve. There would be less fluctuations in trade. So, it wants to improve its international competitiveness. So, for 17, we'll shade in A. 18. A country's unemployment rate rose from 3.6% to 4.2% in 1 year. So, if the unemployment rose, what should happen to the tax revenue and the welfare payments? The welfare payments would rise. So, welfare payments should rise. So, it could either be a B or it could either be a D. What about the tax revenue? The tax revenue would fall. So, it has to be a decrease. So, for 18, it has to be B. Number 19. In a country, some highly paid workers reduce their working hours because of very high income tax rate at high levels of income. Now, what's happening as the income level rises, so does the tax rate. So, what do people do? They don't work at higher levels of income in order to avoid taxation. So, now they are asking what is the disadvantages of this type of taxation? It creates uncertainty for workers. It does not maximize tax revenue. It is inequitable for lower income earners. It is regressive. No, it's not regressive, it's regressive. It is inequitable for lower income earners. No, because it is equitable. As the higher the wages, the higher the taxation. It does not maximize its tax revenue. It creates uncertainty. No, it does not create uncertainty. It's very obvious. It does not maximize its tax revenue because people are evading taxes, avoiding taxes, in fact. So for 19, it has to be B. Number 20. What is most likely to be a reason for taxing oil? Now, imagine why would a government wants to tax something? It wants to either increase its earning, right? It's trying to be protective, so it's trying to conserve its natural resource. So, or it's reducing its consumption, right? So, it's trying to conserve the oil resources, saving it from getting depleted. So, for 20, it has to be A. All right. 21. Brazil's real GDP fell by 3.8% in a year. So, what is real GDP? Real GDP is GDP that is adjusted for inflation and it's falling. So, this means that the economy is shrinking. If the real GDP is falling, this means the economy is shrinking, right? What might have caused this? Now, why would there would be a fall in its real GDP? A decrease in imports, it's wrong because if imports would have fallen, GDP should have been increasing. B, a decrease in income tax. So, if income tax would have been falling, spending would have been increasing. So, real GDP would not have been falling. So, it's incorrect. D says an increase in output per worker. If there would have been increase in output per worker, GDP would have been increasing, not decreasing. But here it says it's decreasing, so it's incorrect. So, we are left with C. An increase in interest rates. Yes, interest rates when are going to rise, so firms are not going to be expanding. As a result, the outputs would fall, right? So the economy would shrink. So for 21, it has to be C, both by logic and elimination. 22. Factory owners invest in technologically advanced industrial production by building large scale new energy efficient factories. So now what are factories doing? They are investing in high tech production process. What is the negative consequence for this for local people? So the people of that area, how would they suffer? If the firms are moving towards more of innovation, employing more of capital. So this means they would be demanding less of labor. So these people would be redundant, they would be unemployed. So it would cause what? Lead to structural unemployment, right? So if the firm is investing in technology, people will get redundant and there would be structural unemployment because people would be replaced. So for 22, it has to be C. Number 23. Country X measures unemployment by counting the number of people claiming unemployment benefit. Why might this be underestimating the level of unemployment? So why do you think this method would not be able to register the exact amount of unemployed people? Because some job seekers do not claim benefits. Though being unemployed, they might not be claiming the benefits. So for 23, it has to be C. So it won't be accurate then, because you're only measuring unemployment through benefit claims. So you're missing those unemployed people who do not claim the benefit. 24. What is likely to cause deflation? Deflation is a fall in the general price level. So a fall in the general price level would be how? Possible when there are technological advances, right? So we'll shade in D. Higher employment level, higher production costs, increase in money supply, all are going to increase the level of inflation, increase the price level and not fall. So it has to be B. What is now MCQ number 25? What is most likely reason that an improved standard of education will alleviate poverty? So if people are going to be more educated, they're going to be better skilled. As a result, they will be employed. So once they will be employed, there would be a decrease in the rate of unemployment. So when there would be a decrease in the rate of unemployment, poverty level would fall. So for 25, it has to be B. Number 26. What will increase a country's population, other things being equal? Let's look at the option. Decrease life expectancy. So people are going to have a less expectancy life. So the population would not increase, it would rather decrease. So we'll chop D. Death rates, if the more people are going to die rather than being born, again the population is going to fall and not increase. A rise in emigration means if the more people are going to leave your country rather than coming in, again the population is not going to increase rather than it's going to fall. So we'll chop A. It's B, when more people are going to come into your country, moving into your country. So for 26, it has to be B. Number 27. Country Y decides to specialize in the domestic mining of rare materials for its electric car batteries. What is the benefit for the country Y? So if this country decides to specialize, so its efficiency is going to increase. So when its efficiency is going to increase, it's going to be producing more, and as a result, it will be able to export its surplus. So it will lead towards increased exports. So for 27, we'll shade in B. 28. The UK government increases the price of steel imported from Germany by increasing an existing tariff. So now it imposes tariff on its imports of steel from Germany. Who does it? UK. So now they are asking what would be the impact of this decision on the German steel producers' revenue and the UK government revenue. So the UK government revenue should increase because now it's earning tariffs. So you'll chop A, you'll chop C because they are both talking about decrease. So we are left with B and D. What about the impact on German steel producers' revenue? Now we know, yes, the demand is, it says steel has price inelastic demand. Although it's inelastic, yet there would be a little fall in the demand because after the tariff, there would be a little fall in the quantity demanded by the UK consumers. So for 28, it has to be B. 29. The table displays the value of the UK pound against the US dollar in June and September. Now, if you look at the exchange rate, initially the pound was, 1 pound was $1.48. 1 pound was equals to $1.48. What happened in September? It fell to 1.32. So it depreciated. This means that its exports got cheaper and its imports got expensive. Who's? UK. So now they are saying what is the likely consequence for the UK economy in the short run. So now because of these changes in the exchange rate that the pound has depreciated, what would it, how would it impact the UK economy? An increase in the budget deficit. Budget deficit is related to the revenues and the expenses of the government. It's not balance of payment deficit. Students, please pay heed. It's not BOP deficit we are talking about. We are talking about the budget deficit. This means the revenue and the expenditure of the government. So it has nothing to do with the revenue and the expenditure. an increase in the price of exports. No, the exports have gotten cheaper. C says increase in the price of imports. Yes, because the imports have gotten expensive now. So that's the correct answer. So for 29, we'll shade in C. Alright, 30. That's the last MCQ. The table shows a selection of the UK, a selection of economic data for a country. It's displaying all the four components that are included in the current account balance of a BUP of a country: primary income, secondary income, total value of exported goods and imported goods, total value of exported services, and total value of imported services. So now what we'll do, we'll first calculate the trade in goods. How we'll calculate the trade in goods? Exports was 1000, imports was a 2000. So 1000 was a negative, and 1000 minus the 2000, it gives us a negative 1000. Exports was less, imports was more. You got a negative 1000 over here. Trade in services, exports was 800, imports was 200. So you got a positive 600. Now you will add in the primary income 1000 minus 500 minus 1000 plus 600. You will get up ending $100 million. 1000 minus 500 minus 1000, which was the trade in goods balance and the trade in services balance, plus 600 minus 500 and plus 600, you'll be left with a positive $100 million as the current account balance of the balance of payment in this country. You can recall that these are the four components of the balance of payment current account, right? The trade in goods displays the value of exported goods and services, the value of exported goods and the value of imported goods. It was displaying a deficit. Trade in services displays the value of exported services and the value of imported services. It was displaying a surplus. Primary income is the income earned by people working in different countries, and investment income which comes into and goes out of the country. And secondary income was what? The transfers between residents and the non-residents of money or goods or services, not in return for anything else. And when you add in all these four components, it will yield you the balance in the BUP current account of your country. I hope you enjoyed solving this with me. Stay tuned. I'll be coming up with more such tutorials. Happy learning. Subscribe. Take care.